All right, welcome back to the Mr. Rent to Own Home Show. My name is Dominic Danino, aka Mr. Rent to Own Homes. And in this live, we're going to be talking about how can you possibly lower your housing costs with a rent to own home. So that is the topic for the day. And I am joined by James Brown, as always, Denver real estate agent investor with EXP. Welcome back, James.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive into this topic, right? So we know that housing costs are expensive. Now, there is speculation that the Federal Reserve could start lowering interest rates. So that has an impact as we move forward into housing for the second half of the year and then into 2025, right? But let's just say that nothing changes. Let's just run a hypothetical that nothing changes and the housing market doesn't change and rates stay the same and the cost of housing in general are going to remain the same, right? Because we're not seeing a lot of price decreases. We're seeing longer term times on the market, but not so much big price decreases. So let's talk about this scenario. Is like, so if somebody wants to get into a home but doesn't qualify currently, and they need a rent-to-own program, but also the affordability of the payment. If they afford it, great. But also, how can you potentially supplement that payment? What are some of the methods that somebody could get into a rent-to-own home and add an additional strategy that we know, or strategies that we know to implement to help them supplement in making those payments while they're through our program and eventually when they own the house themselves, right? So I'll kick it off to you, and you let's talk about this. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, let's start with my favorite one. The first rent-to-own home that we helped somebody get into was actually a fellow real estate agent, self-employed, couldn't get a loan. He needed 2 full years making good money as an agent. He didn't have that. And so, like many self-employed, he's in the very similar situation. He picked out a duplex that we bought for him, and we rented it to him until he was able to get a loan and buy it within a year and a half. He was able to live cheaper than if he'd just rented one side of that duplex. We had an agreement with him. He paid a certain amount, market rent. He was able to basically live for about $400 a month. This was in another market where prices are a little lower, but anyway, that's how he was able to live cheaper than he normally would.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a method of house hacking, right? Yep. Do you want to explain to people what house hacking is, or what the definition of house hacking is in your own words? Doesn't have to be the encyclopedia's version, but no.
Yeah.
Talk about
is
that.
It in the encyclopedia? Wait, what's an encyclopedia?
Yeah. Anybody even use those, right?
Right.
So I'm dating myself. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah. Basically, it's buying a home, living in it, and then renting out at least one other room so that somebody else is helping you pay your mortgage. So that's the simple answer. And there's some different ways of doing it. The duplex was one way. You could buy a fourplex and live in one and rent out the other 3. You can buy a single family home, rent out every other room, or maybe you and your significant other have 2 of the rooms and you rent out the other 2 if it's a 4-bedroom. Like, there's a lot of different ways to kind of slice it up and leverage.
That's the cool terminology in the investor world, is the house hacking, right? But in reality, if you think back to maybe your college years, or your early post college years or early job years, where you had roommates, right? Simplified method of roommates, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's called house hacking these days, because there's a couple of ways to go about it. You talked about buying a property that multi-unit property, so 2 to 4 units, live in one and rent out the others. And then the other simplified or old school method is, hey, I buy a house, or I rent a house, with with 3 bedrooms, and I live in one and share the rest of the house with 2 other people, and they rent out each room. Either we all are responsible on the lease, right, or one party is responsible, and then they're responsible for collecting the money from the other people and managing those individuals, right, and kind of coming up with their own solution to that process. So yeah, house hacking, different methods going about it, right? So the old simplified college, having college roommates or roommates, post college, right? And then now these days using house hacking, and then there's some more advanced methods in the way that things are done. So yeah, so that is one way to lower your housing costs, even through our rent to own program, right? You talked about somebody buying a duplex, lived in one, rented out the other.
Mhm.
Now, here's the qualifier that I would say is, if somebody came to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a rent to own home, but I want to buy a fourplex, I'm going to say, yes, it's possible. But I'm going to say is this your first time managing tenants? Right now, in this scenario that you talked about, this individual's in the industry, right? They're a real estate agent, so they have an understanding of some of the pitfalls of managing other people. Generally, most people come in to buy a house, they get their hands full enough trying to make sure that they get to their job and make the payments on time and managing their own life, let alone managing 2 or 3 other people and trying to collect rents, because that's just not what they do.
No.
Right? They're not in the business. However, if somebody that comes along that's we have a feeling that, hey, this is somebody that could handle something like this, then yeah, potentially, yeah, I don't see why not, right? Obviously, they're responsible for it. We wouldn't be going around and trying to collect rents on the other units, right? They would be responsible, just like if they bought it.
Yeah.
Right. So I throw that caveat out there, just so in case people start saying, oh yeah, I want a fourplex, but I never even owned a house before, so I don't even know what maintaining a house means or what it entails, right? So I throw a word of caution with that when it comes to our program. Now, if somebody can qualify for a home loan on their own, get a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, and there are programs out there. As a matter of fact, Fannie Mae actually allows you to buy a multifamily 2 to 4 unit with 5% down.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right, as owner occupied, meaning you got to live in one of the units. Right. Obviously, you have to have the credit, you have to have the down payment yourself, and also be able to sustain or support that payment through your income. Right. But that option is there now.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
That was
So let's say
last year. Right?
Yeah. So let's just say, hey, it's not a rent to own. You qualify. That's potentially an option, right? Now, obviously, it's going to depend on your market too, because certain markets don't have a whole ton of multifamily properties, right, or 2 to 4 units. Some areas are more of a subdivision builder kind of layouts where they're just single family standalone houses, right? So those tend to be in maybe a little bit older neighborhoods and so forth, but those are out there. If you do your homework and you know your market and search it and take a look, then yeah, absolutely. So that is potentially. So let's talk about number 2, right? Let's talk about. So we talked about multifamily and then house hacking in itself, right? So having roommates. People have had roommates, or maybe somebody. It could be friends, and it doesn't necessarily have to be friends, right? If you know that you can manage a property or manage individuals as you either vet them yourself or you may know them, and then let them occupy some of the other rooms. So if you say you qualify for a 4-2 or a 4-3 or a 3-2 or even a 3-1 to that extent, then you could potentially rent out the other rooms, right? That's a way to kind of save money cost-wise. Yeah. Now, James, what if I say, well, I'm married and I got kids. I don't know that I can have single or other individuals living in the house also in one of my extra rooms per se, right? So what's another option?
ADUs.
That's right.
Accessory dwelling units. That's what ADU stands for. So basically, mother-in-law apartment.
There's multiple terminology for those. Casitas,
yep.
Right? The granny units, or So multiple ways, depending on your market, they're calling different things, but generally it's just either an additional standalone or joint unit. It could be attached or it could be standalone, that a property has that's been zoned out or in an area that allows for it. And we're just talking about before we got on, right? So the market has changed because of the shortage of housing. A lot of the municipalities are easing up on the restrictions in their zoning to be able to buy properties or to build accessory dwelling units, either attached or detached, depending on those communities' restrictions. So yes, so that is definitely an option. You want to talk about what's happening in Denver?
Yeah. The trend was towards allowing more of those. In fact, Denver County had a full plan laid out specifically addressing ADUs. Time's gone by since they came up with that plan, and we've just had so many more people move in here. So the problem of the density and availability of housing has gotten worse since they came up with the plan. So they've loosened things up even more, which is fantastic for investors that this would be a good plan for. So yeah, going in the right direction.
Yeah. So and then obviously I don't know if you follow also, but in California, right, the state has taken over those regulations that were used to be left to the local municipalities. Now the state has taken over and basically has passed a law saying, hey, municipalities, you cannot restrict people from building ADUs on their properties, right? Mm-hmm. So, some communities are a little bit, aren't looking to make whole lot of changes. They like the status quo, right? But so if people are being turned down by their local municipality, they can appeal to the state, and the state will overturn those decisions by the local municipality to allow them to build additional units. There are certain rules to those, and obviously, if you're in those markets, it's important that you know those rules or search somebody that's already doing it, and we could probably point you the right direction. But that's obviously California's a big market. Here in the Phoenix metro, that's also been there's some certain rules, but that's been a growth area as well, right? And as a matter of fact, I was just doing this week a search for available properties on the MLS in Maricopa County. How many properties have an ADU that are available for sale? And I found somewhere in the mid 80s.
Oh, wow.
Right. So just to get an idea, right? So what we're talking about, we do rent to own, but how is it so somebody could either not necessarily through rent to own? We do rent to own, but if somebody qualifies for a house, that is a way to supplement their income or supplement their payment to that mortgage, right? And as we know, even if you got a studio, right? A studio bathroom with a studio and a kitchenette, right? Those, in the metro here, in the Phoenix metro, those are going to rent for at least $1,200.
Yeah.
Because you get a 1-bedroom studio apartment that's going for $1,800, right? So think about that, right? So how much how does that help somebody, right? And even if you take it to a further extent, somebody could build out a 2-1, right? You can rent it for a little bit more, or a 1-bedroom, 1 bath, and so forth, right? So not only could you buy one that's already built out, but we talked about some of the programs that I have as a lender. What lenders will allow you to buy a property and also build the ADU as part of your one loan package.
Yeah, that's
right?
nice.
Now they don't give you all the money, right? They put it in escrow, and obviously you need a contractor's bid, so that you got to figure out what the cost is of that, right? And they give you 6 months to go ahead and build it, right? And that money is put in escrow, and then it's drawn by the contractor over a period of time as the work is being completed, and somebody comes out and inspects that the work has been done. Right. But in the end, you end up with just one payment. Right. And with that unit being built out. So if somebody has a family, they could live in the main house and rent out the ADU to either somebody that's not a family member, or even a family member, say elderly family member, or the younger kids, right, or some family member. These days, we're seeing more and more. We have multi-generational households,
Yeah.
right? Especially for us, are getting into a certain age where we have, kids that are becoming almost adults, and then we have older parents, right? And sometimes you kind of have to juggle those two things, right? More kids are staying and living at home and staying at home, not moving out, right? Because of the cost of housing.
Yeah.
So, that's potentially somebody. And, this could be early 20s or late teens that have jobs and can help pay for that housing, and or elderly parents that you need close by to
Yeah.
keep an eye out on, right? And they obviously have their income, whether it's from their own retirement, Social Security, whatever that may be, to help and supplement those housing costs. And you
Yeah.
keep them nearby as well, because you want to make sure that they're okay, as they get older and older.
Yeah.
Right. So that is definitely one of those things that I've been looking into over the last several weeks, just to see if there's a way that we can kind of strategize or offer another option to people. Is, hey, I don't qualify traditionally right now. However, I have elderly parents, or I think I can manage an additional unit by myself. But I'd like to buy it, but I don't qualify. Is this potentially an option on a rent-to-own home?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways to go about it, right? One that's already built out, potentially one that needs to be built. Depends on the situation, right? Everything's case by case, right? I'm not gonna say everybody qualifies for that, right? But it's an option to potentially discuss, to open up the market to more people and kind of help in affordability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a problem. So
Definitely a problem, right? Even if rates start to come down, I think still, that's a benefit. If the municipalities are allowing for the growth of this, they why not take advantage of it,
Yeah.
right? And like I mentioned, I have several lenders that are doing ADUs or renovation loans as part of the package, or obtaining financing to build one if you already own the house and you're thinking, oh, I think I want to build out an ADU. There's multiple ways to go about it, right? There's a couple of different strategies. So yeah, getting creative and thinking a little bit outside the box, right? And understanding what are the needs of the community, your market, whether you're an agent or a lender or a potential homeowner, right? It's like, hey, how can I strategize to have more options? And obviously affordability is an issue. So any thoughts on there before we get into the last one, right? Which you've been working on, and we've been kind of working on, but any thoughts on the ADU aspect?
I think we covered it. I would say if somebody's in the Colorado market, I do know there's multiple builders that specialize in ADUs, but I do have one, and they're actually coming to speak on Monday here in the DTC area at our Colorado Cash Flow Club. So look that up on Meetup, Colorado Cash Flow Club, and come check it out. And we're also going to have a guy that's works for Denver Planning. He's going to speak before the ADU guys. So if you're interested, show up.
Definitely, right. And this goes to all of you, either agents or homeowners out there, or potential home buyers, working with people that are knowledgeable in the industry, that aren't just cookie cutter, one tool kind of people. It's like you only have one pitch in their arsenal, right? Work with people that are kind of like understand the different aspects of the market, and from traditional to non-traditional, right? Unfortunately, not all agents out there are familiar with the non-traditional aspects of real estate, right? And it's not necessarily their fault, right? It just tends to be one of those things where it's not stuff that they teach you in real estate school, right? They teach you how to pass the test. They don't teach you really a whole lot of real estate per se, right? And a lot of times people end up working for brokers that may teach them, or some brokers they don't want anybody going outside the lines or getting creative, because they're afraid that somebody may create cause a mistake and cause them to get sued or something along those lines, right? So that's unfortunate. Fortunately, they're very risk adverse. But if you're somebody out there, you want to get information on uh, creative ways of housing, especially ADUs, house hacking, and so forth, uh, you're more than welcome to reach out to James. James just mentioned that he's got a meetup with the housing development in Denver, to kind of get more ideas of that. And then if you're in the Arizona market, reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to kind of point you in the right direction. And other markets around the country too, because we know a lot of investors that are applying some of these methods around the country, and we could kind of find the right person to kind of put you in the right direction. So
yeah, and you're licensed as a lender in both Colorado, Arizona, and other states. So
yeah, absolutely, right. So the lending aspect is really important, because obviously the idea is great, but if you can't get funding for it and you can't execute on the strategy, then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good if just knowing about it, right? So how do we execute on this, right? It's obviously getting around knowledgeable people, getting the right answers to your questions, and finding some solutions to the problem. So last but definitely not least, you want to talk about let's talk about the co-living. What is co-living, James?
Similar to house hacking in that you're renting out rooms separately. You can do it if you live in the home, or you don't have to live in the home. You can just be an investor, landlord, and rent out all those rooms separately. So it's solving the affordability problem, especially, the Denver market. And I know they do it in Phoenix as well. So it's basically filling that gap where, a 1-bedroom apartment or a studio might be, over $1,000 for sure, where you can get 1 bedroom in a home where it feels like a home, because it is a home. You have the kitchen and living room and maybe back porch, have barbecues, that kind of thing. So there's the other advantage is just kind of having community. There's a loneliness crisis with all age groups, and so it's helping that as well. So affordability and loneliness. So that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So you talked about you bringing up 2 great points there. The first one being affordability and the gap between what people can afford to what the costs are. And clearly there's a section of the population that can't qualify for a single family house, right? Because it's out of their budget. And then rents by themselves have also gone up. And we're not talking about single family rents. We're talking about apartment rents where you can do a studio or a 1-bedroom, and those rents have gone up as well. And it's to the point where a section of the market can't afford those either.
Yep. A pretty large section. Yeah, if you look at the data, there's data out there. There's a lot of people that, work at Target or a restaurant, make $45,000 a year. You can't afford this 1-bedroom apartment. This is a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, a great point. So I think the average or the median household income in the U.S. is $55,000. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you take that divided by 12, right, that's roughly about $4,000 a month, or $4,500 a month. If you're paying $2,000 of that money for rent on an apartment, what are you left with? Not a whole lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of expenses.
That's even before taxes, right? Yeah. So it's not like you're taking home that much. You're not taking $4,500 a month home. Yeah. Are you taking home less than that? Probably closer to like $3,800, maybe $3,500.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're paying $1,800 to $2,200 a month in rent, you're not left for a whole lot. So this is where this co-living method, co-living. I don't know what I would call it. I mean, it's a method from a housing standpoint, but I mean, I would think it's it's another a way of having affordable housing, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it really is affordable housing, right? Without calling it affordable housing,
Yeah.
yeah, it's filling a need between a traditional one bedroom apartment um, to not being able to have a roof over your head, right?
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
between being homeless and not being able to afford a one bedroom apartment,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's really the gap, right? Because if you can't afford a one bedroom apartment or a studio, uh, then where are you living? You living at home or you living with friends? But eventually that gets old too. I'm sure they want you to kind of have your own place. You want to have your own place,
Yeah.
and also you're not doing it for free, right? Eventually, people get tired. Okay, you're staying around the house. You're living for free with friends. Friends are going to say, "Hey, are you going to contribute something, right?" And if
Yeah.
you're going to contribute to them, then you might as well just have your own place and kind of come and go as you please,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's definitely a need in the market. Blue collar people, right? If you work a blue collar job,
Yeah.
right? Wages wages are going to be, let's say, even if they're in the uh, annually in the 50,000 range. Yeah, housing is or single family housing and or apartment um, is getting to the point where those people can't afford it, or they could afford it, but that leaves them with not a whole lot else, right? People still want to, hey, go out to
Yeah.
eat or go to a movie or whatever, right? Entertainment, right?
Yeah.
So why not save some of that money, uh, or potentially save some of that money to just build up savings,
Right.
right? And eventually get a house so you can do a house hack,
Yeah.
right? Build enough savings and say, oh, now I have enough savings. Now I did co-living with somebody and I know what that's like, and now I can be the owner of the house and do that for other people. How about
Exactly.
that?
Yeah. That's my dream, man. Help people just keep going up the steps.
Right, that's coming full circle with that, right?
Yeah.
Coming
Totally.
full circle. Hey, you've been on one side of the fence, now you get to be on the other side of the fence and help other people out and help them take that same path that you're going, right? So it's some of these things are um, unto themselves. They become a uh, it become more of a passion for us, right? Because we can kind of see the logic and the strategy behind it, and it's like, oh, no, you start here, go here, go here, go here, right? And no, not everybody starts at the end or at the top. You got to start somewhere, right? But
Yeah.
realistically, right? And it could be done with some planning and strategy and so forth. So that's why working with people like us, hate to say it, but uh, no, thinking a little bit outside the box, getting creative, coming up with solutions, and seeing some of the things that are happening in the market that people don't even realize. That when I run into agents or different people that want to talk about housing with me, I ask them, it's like, hey, have you heard of co-living? You understand what that is, or have you, or hey, potentially that house could be a co-living property because of the location, because it's near a bus stop or public transportation or whatever it is from an investor standpoint.
Yep.
And right, it's like, are you familiar with any of those? Or agents like, oh, I didn't know this is a thing or it's happening, whatever. Well, it's at the early stages. It's going to be a thing as we move forward into the future, because there's definitely a need, and there's definitely not enough housing. I mean, potentially, could every house have an ADU to help solve that? Yeah, but I don't know that it's going to solve that on to buy sell, right? I think there's still going to be a demand for it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you want to talk a little bit more about co-living or anything you want to add with that?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to mention is Section 8 vouchers can be used for co-living. So that's a good way to combine things. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot we could dive into with the co-living. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Where should we start?
Yeah, I mean, so co-living to me, it's got two aspects. It's meeting the needs of housing for people that can't afford traditional housing, and two, there's an investor aspect of it, or housing provider aspect of it. I don't want to call it an investor, right? But somebody's kind of going to come in and buy the asset and create the co-living house, right? Either doing the conversion to the property, adding the additional rooms, creating the shared space as some places do, right? If it makes sense. So there's an investor aspect to it, or a housing provider aspect to it.
Yeah.
Just like somebody that says, hey, I'm just going to buy a lot and build houses and rent them out, right? That's a housing provider. Or I'm going to build an apartment building and I'm going to rent out the units. That's a housing provider, right? This is just a different housing provider method, right? Obviously, that takes capital and ability to buy property, right? So that's one end of it. And then the other end is hey, if somebody's in need of housing, that's either working their way, your first job after you graduate from college isn't going to be the highest paying job. That may not be able to give you doesn't make enough money for you to go buy a house right away, right? Yep. Or even rent an apartment right away, right? But there's a need, or it doesn't necessarily have to always be that. It could be corporate travelers, right? People that are traveling for business. It's like, hey, I'm not going to stay in a hotel for a month, right? I want to have a kitchen and a refrigerator and a microwave, and I want to live somewhere. So the other people that have been doing Airbnb to that, but Airbnb has gotten expensive, and it may not make sense if you're a business traveler and your own business and you're trying to get a business up and running. You're trying to manage your costs, right? You don't have you're not quite there yet as a Fortune 500 company that can put up somebody in a corporate housing, an Airbnb for months and pay $7,000 to $10,000 a month for a fully furnished house, right? But if you're a corporate traveler and you're getting a business up and running, but you got to go other states, other areas for business, and you're trying to manage your budget, that's another gap that's being filled. Oh, hey, it could be just travelers. Hey, I'm going to be in the city and I'm doing solo, right? But I can't afford the Airbnb because you got the cleaning fees and this fee and that fee and all these fees that Airbnb has gotten out of hand, right? There's an opportunity for somebody to stay in a co-living area for a month or 2 weeks or whatever that may be, or a co-living property to fill in those voids, and as you mentioned, have an opportunity to kind of meet other people, like-minded individuals. I know of a few places locally where they only recruit new entrepreneurs. They only want entrepreneurs in the house because it's a way to collaborate. Yep. Somebody, hey, you're a marketing entrepreneur. I'm a sales entrepreneur. I have a gadget that I'm selling entrepreneur. How do we collaborate? Yeah, we live in the house and we're trying to get our business up and running, but can we collaborate, right? Almost like a
Shark Tank house.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And actually that was one of those things that kind of started up in Silicon Valley, right? Because housing was so expensive. All the engineers and all the people in the high tech couldn't afford their own place. So what was started happening a lot. I don't know if it's but it had been a thing where somebody would rent out a big house and you had a bunch of people living in it and working out of the house, and an incubator style kind of house, right?
There you go.
So I mean that's a pretty if you're a young entrepreneur, you're starting a business, or you're just getting into the corporate world and you want to be around other people, like-minded people, right? Then that's a great option.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, we've talked about this a lot, in our co-living masterminds about that. 55 and older. I know was somebody that's doing that in Oregon. You can't really go out and market it. There's a lot of rules around doing that, but there's ways to attract similar people for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's some of that already in effect of, student housing. Off market, like off campus student housing happens a lot. We got them out here and obviously near the university.
Sure.
Right. There's a lot of the houses are outside of the campus that are not part of the university, part of the dorms. But a lot of people do student housing where they rent out individual rooms to students.
Yep. And we like to
So
differentiate too, like students are their own animal. As far as
absolutely.
dealing with
Absolutely.
students versus somebody
Yeah.
that's out on their own now. They've got a job. They're
Absolutely. Yeah.
less prone
Yeah.
to partying and tearing up a place.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If you got a job that you got to get to work, and you got a presentation in the morning or a sales meeting, you don't want to be in the same house with the college kids that are partying until 3 a.m.
Yeah. That's why we have rules with co-living for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But like I said, there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. There really is something for everybody. You just got to look for it. Right.
Mhm.
And think a little bit outside the box.
Yep.
And at what stage of your life are you in? Right. It's like, so yeah.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this topic here, and anything you want to add?
If somebody's interested in any part of what we just talked about in Phoenix or Colorado or other states, like Dom said, we're well connected in other states as well, but reach out. Happy to chat about all that.
Yeah, absolutely. How can they get a hold of you, James, if they want to reach out and kind of connect?
On the screen, if you're watching, Linktree/partner with James Brown. I got lots
Also,
of.
you have a Facebook group too. You want to shout out your Facebook group?
For investors in Colorado, Colorado Real Estate Investing is the Facebook group.
And you're part of don't you have a community as part of EXP as an agent too?
We've got our internal, and so I've got some groups. If anybody's in EXP as a realtor, they can go poke around in there. We have a co-living and pad split group in there as well. There's only 9 of us so far. It's brand new. So
see, yeah. I mean, and speaking of that, right? So I mean, so EXP network, how many agents are in the EXP? I guess about, I don't know, 50,000?
I think we're closer to 100 now, like worldwide. Okay. But yeah, probably 70,000 in the US.
Okay, so out of 70,000, there are only 9 agents that are interested in co-living.
Yeah, well, I think it's
really
fairly new group.
Okay,
but it's kind of a new concept for a name for it, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So clearly, it's in the early stages, right? So yeah. I mean, if you're an agent out there, you're part of EXP or not, right? There are communities out there you want to learn more. If you're part of EXP, obviously get a hold of James and join that community. Or if you're not, reach out to one of us. We're part of other communities that are applying or implementing the co-living methods. So yeah, definitely. And if you want to get a hold of me, if you're an agent or a lender that has clients that can't qualify for traditional financing, or if you're a potential home buyer that's been turned down by a lender and you're looking to get more information on a rent-to-own home program, go to our website, rent2ownhomesus.com. And I am on Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube as Mr. Rent-to-Own Homes. And you can also get a hold of me on my email or phone number in my bio on any of those platforms. So until next time, bye-bye.
Sweet.